Good day, Dr. Leah Akinlonu. Let's start by you introducing yourself to us.
My name is Leah Akinlonu, and I am a psychiatrist. I've known Pastor Femi for quite a number of years now. And in addition to being a psychiatrist, I am a believer in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
My specialty as a psychiatrist is mental health. I'm passionate about turning mental health risk into recovery.
Mental health as a pastor, I mean, we minister to the spirit, we focus on spiritual health, and obviously we focus on a lot on physical health also, because I mean healing and all that. But a lot of attention is not being paid to mental health. And it's a big challenge because we have people struggling with mental health issues and don't even know what to do about it. Think something is wrong with them. Think maybe I'm not spiritual enough. Think maybe there's a curse somewhere, So can you help us? What is mental health?
Okay, I'll make a distinction between mental health and mental illness. Physical health and physical illness. There's good mental health, and then there's mental illness. So physical health is the health of the body. Physical illness is illness of the body. Mental health is health of the mind, and mental illness is illness of the mind. And the way it shows up is it affects people in many different ways. But the predominant things you'll find is that the person is not able to cope with stress. There's stress in day-to-day living. It's normal for everybody to experience stress, but not being able to cope with the day-to-day stress of living, that's a part of mental illness. Not being able to optimize one's potential, not being able to work productively or fruitfully. So the short answer is that mental illness is illness of the mind.
Mental illness, what? I was reading it today, and you talked about two things. You talked about the vulnerability and the triggers of mental health. For the vulnerability, a lot of those factors are outside of our immediate control, obviously, except God does a miracle, and we believe in miracles. However, the triggers are mainly stress related. Can you talk us through the triggers and point us to how we can get help when we struggle in those areas? Yeah.
To clarify, in mentioning stress as a trigger, that it's normal for human being to experience stress.
Right.
I experience stress. You experience stress. Everybody does. Of the mind is being able to deal with stress. So if there's a difficulty or a problem when we wake up in the morning, we're usually able to think, right, this is what I'll do to sort this out before I go to work. We get to work and there's some other difficulty to deal with, it's stress. Or we're late, we've been delayed, it's stress. The mind is designed to be able to deal with the normal stresses of life.
Okay.
In mental illness, stress becomes something that a person cannot handle. And there's so many different sources. Stress from physical health. So physical illness in itself can be a stress factor.
Right.
Physical or emotional factors. Right. Those are forms of stress. And then social or environmental factors. So things like accommodation, difficulty with finances, with accommodation, with employment, or with studies, with education. All of those are different kinds of stress.
Take Hooke's law, for instance. When you have a spring that has elasticity limit, someone with mental illness has a very fragile elasticity limit. In other words, cannot endure even the normal pressures of life, normal weight and load that life puts on you.
The mind is designed to deal with stress, but it can get to a point where it's so overwhelming that the person can no longer deal with it. So as you were describing, if you imagine, I don't have a rubber band here with me, but if you imagine a rubber band to it and release it, it goes back to normal.
Right.
You apply stress and release, it goes back to normal.
Right.
But if you stretch and stretch and stretch, when you release it, it becomes lax.
Right.
It loses the elasticity.
Elasticity.
And if the stress is prolonged, a person is undergoing stress and they're not talking about it, they're not speaking out or seeking help, it can keep stretching and stretching and stretching, and it gets to a point where actually it snaps. But that's the point at which a person begins to have major symptoms of mental illness. So it's really important to speak out very early on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be with a mental health professional. It could be with a friend.
Right.
It could be with a spouse.
Right.
A family member, a counselor,
right.
A pastor. And the pastor might then point the person to a mental health professional. And how do you know a person is undergoing stress? It can affect people in many ways. It can affect their appetite, they not be able to sleep, start withdrawing and isolating socially, not really want to go out, not want to people's calls. Sometimes it begins to affect self-care. Maybe it's a man who might just think, look, I can't be bothered to shave, or a lady doesn't.
I might be stressed, right?
I know sometimes it's a trend and it's a style. You know, when you know when it begins, it's just that, you know,
Absolutely.
I can't be bothered with my appearance. You know, there are different ways it affects the individual. So it's really important to speak out early.
What would you advise a Christian to do? You know, should I just keep it to myself and trust God to deal with this with me? At what point do I speak out? Should I speak out at all? Even though you mentioned it already. Should I not speak out, you know, and just believe?
Yeah. There's no one size fits all answer.
Okay.
But I think as Christians, our primary source is the Lord, the person we speak to.
Absolutely.
You know, as people say, there's a saying that you go to the throne before you go to the phone.
I like that.
Yeah, it's not my quote. I picked it up from somewhere. But yeah, we talk to the Lord first. But then He's given us friends. He's given us family. He's given us brothers and sisters, colleagues, and other people to speak to. You know, find a trusted friend and say, look, I've been going through this situation. It seems to be prolonged. I'm finding it difficult to cope. Just in your own words, completely honestly, and saying, look, this is what I'm going through and I'm finding it difficult to cope. Sometimes, you see, the intervention can be as basic as problem solving. One of the reasons why people don't speak out is that they're scared that people like me, psychiatrists, will impose medication, and it's not always the case. Sometimes it's essential, but it's not always the case. Sometimes the solution is just, it's practical problem solving. It's giving advice. It's offering support. It's helping a person with their difficulties. Sometimes it is psychological interventions. It could be counseling. It could be behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and so on. Sometimes it's medication. So there are different interventions, but regardless of who you are, Christian or not, don't be afraid to speak out. You know, there's been a lot of shame, a lot of stigma attached to mental illness.
I want you to look at us and speak to that person that is struggling with suicide or is struggling with acute depression or just want to maybe end it all. You know, what would you say to that person?
I think first of all, some people are very aware of how they're feeling and what they're thinking. For some others, they just have a vague sense of, and I don't know what to do. Some of the signs to look out for a feeling of hopelessness, just feeling that nothing can change, nothing can improve. A feeling of worthlessness, feeling like, look, I'm not worth anything. Everybody else might be significant. I'm just nothing. That feeling of worthlessness. And then just feeling negative about whole world around them. Those are really significant signs. And sometimes it extends into feeling, look, I don't think I really want to be alive anymore. And sometimes even feeling, look, I thought of doing such a thing to harm myself or to end my life. Those are quite distressing thoughts. But some people have those thoughts, and sadly they don't ask for help, they don't speak out, and then they can go on to hurt themselves. But a number of people have had those thoughts and they speak out. They ask for help. As we said initially, it's you cry out to the Lord, but you don't stop there. He's given you people around you
Absolutely.
to support and to help. So you speak out.
Absolutely. But whatever you do, don't keep quiet.
Whatever you do, please do not keep quiet.
But go to the throne before you go to the phone.
There's hope, there's recovery. That's why I believe so much in recovery. There is recovery. It doesn't matter how bleak it. I mean, yes, it matters. It's hurtful, it's painful, it's distressing. But regardless, there is recovery.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. You have 2 new books, Mental Illness What and Mental Illness How. I have my copies, complimentary. Thank you very much. And when do we expect copies at Riscovery House in Lagos? And in the meantime, where can people get a copy of the book?
I've got mine right in front of me as well. So they're the what of mental illness and then the how of mental illness, the what and the how. And they're available on Amazon, www.amazon.com. You can either order an ebook or you can order the hard copies as well. And so if you're curious about mental health, you can pick these up and read. By God's grace, we should be able to get copies within the month, within 4 working weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Dr. Leah. And well done in the Riscovery field. And I pray that God will bless your endeavors.
Amen. Amen.